Mr. Caldwell, don't leave this restaurant with the man sitting beside you. Danielle Brooks barely raised her voice, but the words landed harder than a shout. Ethan Caldwell's hand stopped inches from his whiskey glass. Across the private dining room, silverware touched porcelain. Soft piano music drifted beneath the amber glow of crystal chandeliers, and Chicago glittered 40 floors below the windows like a field of cold stars. Yet at Ethan's table, everything seemed to go still. Danielle stood beside him in a pressed black server's uniform, one hand holding an empty tray against her hip, her expression controlled even as her pulse hammered beneath her collar. Ethan looked up at her. 39 years old, founder of Caldwell Meridian, millionaire before 35, a man accustomed to hearing warnings from attorneys, bankers, and security consultants who charged more per hour than Danielle earned in a week. But never from a waitress. Never like this. "Excuse me?" he asked. Danielle glanced across the table. Ryan Mercer was still smiling, but something behind that smile had changed. 5 minutes earlier, he had been laughing about college stories, pouring Ethan another drink, calling him brother the way he had for 18 years. Now his fingers rested motionless beside a leather document folder. Danielle looked back at Ethan. "Whatever he asks you to sign tonight," she said quietly, "don't sign it." Ryan's smile disappeared. "What did you just say?" His voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Danielle knew that tone. She had served enough powerful people to recognize the moment politeness became pressure. Around them sat investors, attorneys, and executives dressed in tailored suits and expensive watches. Some stared. Others suddenly became fascinated by their plates. Danielle could feel every eye that refused to meet hers. Ethan leaned back slowly. "Do you know who this man is?" "Yes, sir." "Then you know he's my closest friend." "I know what I heard." That changed Ethan's face. Not belief. Not yet. But attention. Ryan gave a short laugh and looked around the table as if inviting everyone into the joke. "This is unbelievable. Ethan, she's a server who overheard half a conversation and decided she understands a 9-figure acquisition." Danielle didn't defend herself. She didn't apologize. She didn't ask anyone to trust her. She simply placed Ethan's glass on the table with steady hands. That calm unsettled Ryan more than anger would have. "Danielle," the restaurant manager called sharply from near the doorway. She heard the warning in his voice. One more sentence could cost her the job. Maybe more. She thought about rent due Friday. The aging Honda in the employee lot that needed a new transmission. The grocery list folded inside her purse. She had every practical reason to walk away. But sometimes doing the right thing doesn't arrive when you're ready for it. Sometimes it arrives carrying a tray, wearing tired shoes, and asking what you're willing to lose just to tell the truth. Danielle took one breath. "Mr. Caldwell, you don't have to believe me." Ethan's eyes stayed on hers. Ryan's hand moved toward the leather folder. Danielle noticed it. So did Ethan. "Just promise me one thing," she said. "Before your pen touches that agreement, read page 47. For the first time that evening, Ryan Mercer looked afraid. And Ethan Caldwell saw it. 3 hours earlier, Danielle Brooks had been invisible, and she preferred it that way. At 27, she had learned that invisibility could be useful in rooms where people confused wealth with importance. She moved between white linen tables at the Marlowe room with quiet precision, carrying polished glasses beneath amber lights, while Chicago stretched beyond the windows 40 floors above Michigan Avenue. The restaurant was built for people who expected privacy. Reservations were difficult to get. Dinner for two could easily cost several $100s. The private rooms were quieter still, sealed behind walnut doors where executives discussed acquisitions as casually as other people discussed weekend plans. Danielle had worked there for almost 2 years. She knew which guests wanted conversation, which wanted silence, and which barely noticed the person setting down their dinner. She noticed everyone. That was the difference. Danielle remembered names. She remembered voices. She noticed when someone smiled before telling a lie and when a confident man suddenly checked the door twice. She noticed because observation had become a survival skill long before it became part of her job. Every morning, she woke in a modest apartment on the south side, made coffee in the same chipped blue mug, and checked whether her 12-year-old Honda would start before leaving for work. The car had begun making an expensive sound 2 weeks earlier. A mechanic had quoted nearly $3,000 for the transmission. Danielle had thanked him, driven home carefully, and added the number to a notebook already filled with rent, utilities, groceries, and student loan payments. She did not complain. She calculated. She picked up extra shifts. She kept moving. Her mother used to tell her that dignity was not something another person could hand you. It was something you carried into every room yourself. Danielle carried it into the Marlowe room every night. She carried it when customers snapped their fingers instead of using her name. She carried it when someone handed a coat to her without asking whether she worked the coat check. She carried it when wealthy guests held conversations in front of her as though the black woman refilling their water had somehow stopped having ears. That evening, Table 12 was different. Ethan Caldwell arrived at 7:17 with Ryan Mercer beside him. Danielle knew Ethan immediately. His photograph had appeared in business magazines often enough. Caldwell Meridian had grown from a small freight software company into a national logistics operation, and rumors around the restaurant said Ethan was finalizing the largest acquisition of his career. Ryan was less famous, but louder. He shook hands with investors, remembered everyone's favorite drink, and introduced Ethan as his brother even though they shared no blood. At first, Danielle saw nothing unusual. Ethan thanked her when she poured water. Ryan barely looked at her. Then the leather folder appeared. Ryan placed it beside Ethan's plate and tapped it twice. "Tonight changes everything," he said. Ethan smiled. "Tomorrow changes everything. Tonight, we eat." Everyone laughed. Danielle moved away. 20 minutes later, while carrying clean glasses through the service corridor, she heard Ryan's voice beyond a partially closed door. He was speaking on his phone. Danielle would have kept walking if he had not said Ethan's name. She slowed. Then came 6 words that made her stop completely. After Caldwell signs, "We are clear." Danielle should have kept walking. Every rule of the Marlowe room told her that private conversations belonged to private guests, and employees who forgot that rule rarely stayed employees for long. But Ryan Mercer had said Ethan Caldwell's name, and something in his voice no longer sounded like the charming executive who had been laughing over dinner. Danielle stopped beside a cart of polished glassware, hidden from Ryan by the partially closed service door. After Caldwell signs, "We are clear," Ryan said again. A pause followed. Then his voice dropped. "He will not know until Monday." Danielle felt her fingers tighten around the stem of a water glass. She did not know who was on the other end. She did not know what Ryan meant. Maybe there was an innocent explanation. In a place like this, fragments of business conversations could sound suspicious without being suspicious at all. She reminded herself of that. Then Ryan spoke again. "By then, it will not matter." The call ended. Danielle moved immediately, pushing the cart toward the dining room before Ryan stepped into the corridor. He passed her without a greeting, without recognition. To him, she was part of the furniture. That mistake gave her the chance to notice something else. Ryan returned to table 12, sat beside Ethan, and waited until Ethan turned toward one of the investors. Then Ryan opened the leather folder. He removed several pages, reached inside his suit jacket, and replaced them with another set. The movement lasted perhaps 5 seconds. Danielle saw all 5. Ryan closed the folder and rested his hand on top of it. When Ethan turned back, Ryan smiled. "We should finish this tonight." Ethan shook his head with an amused expression. "You have been saying that since breakfast." "Because tomorrow morning the valuation window changes. We sign tonight, everybody wins. My attorneys reviewed it, every page." Ryan tapped the folder. "Nothing left but your signature." Danielle approached with a fresh bottle of sparkling water. Ryan finally looked directly at her. His smile remained pleasant, but his eyes followed her hands as she poured. "Anything else, gentlemen?" she asked. "Privacy," Ryan answered. Ethan glanced at him. "She is doing her job, and doing it beautifully," Ryan said, returning to the effortless charm that had filled the room earlier. Danielle nodded and walked away, but the words from the corridor followed her. "Monday. It will not matter." Her mind told her not to build a story from fragments. Her instincts told her the story had already been built, and Ethan was sitting inside it. For the next hour, Danielle watched without appearing to watch. Ryan kept the folder close. Ethan spoke about employees, expansion, and what the acquisition could mean for hundreds of families whose paychecks depended on Caldwell Meridian. That was when the situation changed for Danielle. This was not merely one wealthy man risking his own money. Whatever sat inside that folder could reach people who would never eat beneath these chandeliers. Near 9:30, Ethan excused himself to take a call. Ryan remained at the table. Danielle was clearing a nearby setting when he spoke without looking at her. You spend a lot of time listening. Her hand stopped for less than a second. I spend a lot of time serving, sir. Ryan turned toward her. The friendly mask was still there. Good answer. Danielle met his eyes calmly. Would you like more coffee? No. He leaned back. I would like you to remember which job you are being paid to do. Danielle said nothing. She collected the final plate and walked toward the kitchen. Her heart was beating faster now, because uncertainty had just become something else. Ryan knew she had heard him. And 10 minutes later, when Danielle returned to the private room, the leather folder was open in front of Ethan, a silver pen resting across page 1. The silver pen looked harmless. That was what unsettled Danielle most. No alarms. No raised voices. No obvious sign that one signature might change hundreds of lives. Just polished metal resting across expensive paper while Ethan Caldwell finished his phone call near the window. Danielle stood 20 feet away beside the service station, pretending to arrange coffee cups she had already arranged twice. Ryan sat calmly at the table. Too calmly. His warning still echoed in her mind. Remember which job you're being paid to do. Danielle knew exactly what her job was. She also knew what silence could cost. She had learned that years earlier in a place far less elegant than the Marlowe room. Her father, Marcus Brooks, had owned a small neighborhood hardware store on the south side for almost 14 years. It was not glamorous. The floor creaked near aisle 3, the front bell stuck during winter, and Marcus could tell a customer which screw they needed simply by looking at whatever broken piece they carried through the door. Danielle had spent Saturday mornings behind the register doing homework while her father explained that trust was worth more than anything on the shelves. Then he trusted the wrong person. A longtime business partner convinced Marcus to sign documents connected to an expansion plan. Marcus believed him because they had known each other for years. He did not read every page. He did not ask enough questions. By the time the truth became clear, the store was buried under obligations Marcus had never understood he was accepting. Danielle was 19 when the doors closed for the last time. She remembered helping her father remove the faded open sign from the window. He never blamed anyone publicly. He never taught her bitterness. Instead, he gave her one sentence she carried everywhere. Being loyal does not mean pretending you did not see the knife coming. Danielle had understood the meaning. Loyalty without truth was not loyalty. It was permission. Now, beneath chandeliers worth more than her father's old store, she watched another man place 18 years of friendship between himself and a document he had not fully questioned. Ethan returned to the table. Ryan immediately pushed the folder toward him. Everything is ready. Ethan sat down. You are unusually impatient tonight. I am unusually interested in making you richer. A few people laughed. Danielle did not. Ethan opened the agreement. Page after page turned beneath his hand. Ryan spoke while he read, filling the silence with projections, deadlines, investor expectations, anything that kept Ethan moving forward. Danielle looked toward her manager near the doorway. One complaint from Ryan could end her shift. Another could end her employment. Rent was due. Her car needed nearly $3,000 in repairs. She had no wealthy family waiting to rescue her. No powerful connection. No safety net. Only a paycheck and the dignity she had worked hard to protect. Ethan reached page 39. Then 40. Danielle's breathing slowed. She had not seen what was on page 47. She only knew Ryan had replaced pages in that section after the phone call. That meant her warning would be based on observation, not proof. Ethan could dismiss her. Ryan could accuse her of inventing everything. She could lose her job and still fail to stop the signature. Page 43. Ryan checked his watch. Page 44. Danielle lifted a coffee pot and walked toward the table. Every step felt heavier than the last. Page 45. Her manager noticed her moving and frowned. Page 46. Ryan's eyes found Danielle. His expression changed immediately. He knew. Ethan turned the page. 47. Ryan placed one hand over the document and smiled. That section is standard language. We can skip it. Danielle stopped beside Ethan's chair. She finally had her answer. Mr. Caldwell, your coffee. Danielle set the cup beside Ethan with a hand steadier than she felt. Ryan kept his palm over the agreement. We are fine here, he said. Actually, Ethan replied, looking at the page beneath Ryan's hand. I would like to read that section. For half a second, nobody moved. Then Ryan laughed softly and withdrew his hand. Of course. I am only trying to save us from another page of legal language. Ethan scanned the first few lines. Danielle could not see the text, but she saw Ryan watching Ethan instead of the document. That was enough. Her manager appeared. Behind her. Danielle, kitchen. Now. She should have obeyed. Instead, she looked at Ethan. Sir, may I speak with you privately? Ryan leaned back. There it is. Ethan frowned. There what is? The performance. She has been hovering around this table all evening. Ryan turned toward Danielle. What exactly do you want? Money? A recommendation? 5 minutes with a millionaire so you can tell your friends you saved his company. The room became painfully quiet. Danielle felt the insult, but she refused to carry it for him. I do not want anything from Mr. Caldwell. Then stop interfering. Ethan raised one hand. Ryan. No. She has been listening to confidential conversations. That is unacceptable. Danielle's manager stepped closer. I apologize, Mr. Mercer. Danielle, come with me. Danielle looked at Ethan one final time. This was the moment. The safe choice was 3 steps behind her. Her paycheck was 3 steps behind her. She thought of her father taking down that open sign, and she stayed exactly where she was. I heard Mr. Mercer on the phone in the service corridor, she said. Ryan's face hardened. That is a lie. Danielle continued. He said that after you signed, you would not know until Monday. Then he said that by then, it would not matter. Ethan slowly turned toward Ryan. Who were you talking to? Nobody relevant. Ethan, come on. She heard fragments of a conversation. I also saw him change pages in that folder. This time the silence felt different. Ethan looked down at the agreement. Ryan pushed back from the table. This has gone far enough. She is accusing an officer of your company based on something she thinks she saw while carrying coffee. I am telling him what I saw, Danielle said. There is a difference. Ryan looked toward the manager. I want her removed from this room. The manager nodded immediately. Danielle, your shift is over. She felt the words settle in her chest. We will discuss your employment tomorrow. Everyone in hospitality knew what that usually meant. Danielle untied her apron slowly. She folded it once and placed it on the service station. No argument. No tears. No request for mercy. Ryan seemed almost relieved. Ethan did not. Wait, Ethan said. Danielle turned. He studied her as if seeing her for the first time. Why would you risk your job over this? Danielle held his gaze. Because I know what it looks like when someone trusts the wrong person. Ryan shook his head. Unbelievable. Danielle ignored him. You do not have to trust me, Mr. Caldwell. You do not even have to remember my name tomorrow. She glanced toward the agreement. But before you sign anything, have someone who does not report to Mr. Mercer compare page 47 with the version your attorneys approved. Ethan's expression changed. Why that page? Because that is where I saw him make the switch. The manager opened the door. Danielle walked toward it, then stopped without turning around. If I am wrong, all you lose is 10 minutes. Her voice remained calm. If I am right, 10 minutes may be the cheapest thing you buy tonight. Then she left the private room, carrying nothing but her purse, her coat, and the possibility that telling the truth had just cost her the only steady job she had. Danielle was halfway to the employee elevator when Ethan closed the leather folder. The sound was quiet, but everyone at the table heard it. Ryan stared at him. What are you doing? Ethan placed the silver pen beside his untouched whiskey, taking 10 minutes. Ryan gave a tired smile. Because a waitress overheard part of a phone call. Because you just tried to stop me from reading my own agreement. That erased the smile. Ethan pulled out his phone and called Rebecca Shaw, the outside attorney who had led the acquisition review. She answered on the second ring. Rebecca, I need the final approved agreement sent directly to me. The version your team cleared this afternoon. Ryan leaned forward. Ethan, this is ridiculous. Ethan did not look at him. Send it now. Less than a minute later, the file appeared in his email. Ethan opened the electronic copy and placed his phone beside the printed agreement. Page 47. Same heading. Same opening paragraph. Then one sentence changed. Ethan read it twice. The approved version required written authorization from Caldwell Meridian before certain intellectual property rights could be transferred after closing. The printed version removed that protection and replaced it with language granting immediate control to an outside holding company. Ethan felt the room narrow around him. Rebecca, he said, did your team approve any transfer rights to Northbridge Holdings? Silence came through the phone. Then her voice sharpened. No, absolutely not. Ethan, do not sign that document. Ryan stood. This is a formatting issue. Ethan finally looked at him. Sit down. There was no anger in his voice. Somehow, that made the words heavier. Rebecca began comparing the files remotely. Page 48 contained another alteration. Page 52 contained a third. Each change was small enough to disappear inside dense legal language, but together they pointed in one direction. Northbridge Holdings would gain control of assets worth tens of millions of dollars immediately after the acquisition closed. Ethan searched the company name on his phone. Nothing obvious appeared. Rebecca searched deeper. Registration records led to Delaware. Delaware led to another entity. Another entity led to a financial advisory firm. Then Rebecca stopped speaking for several seconds. Ethan, Ryan Mercer is listed as a beneficiary through a private trust connected to that firm. No one moved. Ryan's face lost its practiced confidence. That does not mean what you think. Ethan stared at the man who had stood beside him at graduation, attended his mother's funeral, helped him open Caldwell Meridian's first office, and spent 18 years earning the one thing Ethan rarely gave anyone completely: trust. Tell me what it means. Ryan began explaining. Market strategy, tax structure, temporary control. Words arrived quickly, polished and professional, but none answered the question Ethan actually cared about. Why did you replace the pages? Ryan stopped. Ethan waited. No answer came. That silence told him more than the documents. He called his general counsel next, then his board chair. The closing was suspended immediately. Access to the acquisition files was restricted while an independent review began. Ryan tried once more. You are destroying 18 years over the word of a stranger. Ethan looked toward the empty doorway Danielle had walked through minutes earlier. No, he said. I am checking the facts because a stranger had enough courage to tell me where to look. Downstairs, Danielle stepped into the cold Chicago night with her coat pulled tight around her. She did not know that page 47 had stopped the deal. She did not know that attorneys were already uncovering the trail Ryan thought no one would notice. She only knew her employee badge was still upstairs and that tomorrow she might not have a job. Her Honda took 3 attempts to start. As she pulled away from the curb, 40 floors above her, Ethan asked the restaurant manager a question nobody in that private room had expected him to ask. What is Danielle Brooks's address? By 11:30 that night, the private dining room no longer felt expensive. It felt empty. The investors were gone. The untouched desserts had been cleared. Chicago still glittered beyond the windows, but Ethan Caldwell sat alone at the long table with his jacket draped over the chair beside him and 18 years of memories suddenly demanding new explanations. Ryan had been asked to leave while the independent review continued. His company credentials were temporarily suspended. His access to the acquisition files was frozen. Nothing had been publicly decided yet, but Ethan understood enough. This was not a misunderstanding hidden inside complicated paperwork. Someone he trusted had deliberately placed altered pages in front of him and expected friendship to do what legal scrutiny could not. Make him stop asking questions. Rebecca Shaw remained on the phone as her team traced the documents. We found another connection, she said. Ethan closed his eyes. Tell me. Northbridge Holdings was tied through several entities to a private trust established 14 months earlier. Ryan had financial interests connected to it. The altered agreement could have shifted valuable technology rights away from Caldwell Meridian after closing, creating losses that might eventually reach far beyond the executive floor. Ethan looked at the empty chair where Ryan had been sitting. 18 years. Birthdays. Business launches. Long flights. Family dinners. Ryan had been there when Caldwell Meridian employed 6 people in a rented office with unreliable heat. Ethan had believed history was evidence of character. Tonight taught him otherwise. How did we miss this? He asked. Rebecca answered carefully. We did not. The version we approved did not contain these changes. Ethan looked toward page 47. A waitress earning an hourly wage had noticed what a room full of highly paid professionals had not, because she had been watching the person while everyone else watched the deal. She knew him for 10 minutes, Ethan said quietly. Rebecca did not understand. Ethan did not explain. He ended the call and found the restaurant manager waiting near the doorway. Where is Danielle? The manager shifted uncomfortably. She went home. You fired her? I told her we would discuss her employment tomorrow. That is not what I asked. The manager hesitated. Mr. Mercer demanded action. He is a major client. Ethan stared at him. She protected one of your guests from signing a compromised agreement, and your response was to punish her. We did not know she was right. Neither did she. That was the point. Danielle had acted without knowing whether anyone would thank her. She had risked something real while expecting nothing in return. Ethan stood and picked up the leather folder. She comes back with full pay for the shift she lost. No disciplinary note. No retaliation. The manager nodded quickly. Of course. Ethan started toward the door, then stopped. And I need a way to contact her. Privacy rules prevented the manager from simply handing over an employee's home address. So instead he agreed to call Danielle and ask permission to share it. She did not answer. Ethan left his number and a message. Outside, the wind off Lake Michigan had turned colder. His driver opened the rear door of a black luxury sedan, but Ethan remained on the sidewalk for a moment. Money had solved thousands of problems in his life. It could hire attorneys, buy speed, purchase comfort. Tonight, none of those things had told him the truth. Danielle had. Across the city, she was sitting at her kitchen table beneath a weak overhead light, staring at a termination meeting reminder on her phone while calculating how long her savings would cover rent. Her Honda keys rested beside an unpaid repair estimate for $2,870. Then her phone lit up with a voicemail from an unfamiliar number. Danielle listened once, then twice. Ethan Caldwell wanted to speak with her. She set the phone down without calling back. At nearly midnight, Ethan gave his driver a new instruction. Tomorrow morning, we are going to the south side. The driver glanced into the mirror. What time? Ethan looked at page 47 resting beside him. Early. And before we go, I need you to make one stop. At 7:12 the next morning, Danielle woke to the sound of voices outside her apartment building. Not loud voices. Curious ones. The kind that made neighbors pull curtains aside and stand near windows with coffee cups in their hands. Danielle sat up on the couch. She had fallen asleep there sometime after 2, still wearing the sweater she had changed into after work. Her phone showed 3 missed calls, 1 message from the Marlowe room, and another from Ethan Caldwell's office. She ignored them for the moment. Then someone knocked on her door. Danielle crossed the small living room and looked through the peephole. A man in a dark suit stood in the hallway. Behind him, Mrs. Jenkins from apartment 4 was pretending to check her mail while watching everything. Danielle opened the door only a few inches. Danielle Brooks. Yes. Good morning. My name is Thomas Reed. I work for Mr. Caldwell. He asked me to let you know he is downstairs. Danielle stared at him. Why? Thomas smiled politely. I think he would rather explain that himself. Danielle grabbed her coat and followed him outside. The cold Chicago morning hit first. Then came the silence. Parked at the curb was a black luxury sedan so polished it reflected the brick apartment building across the street. It looked almost absurd beside Danielle's aging Honda, which sat 20 feet away with rust beginning to show near one wheel well. Several neighbors watched from windows. A delivery driver slowed as he passed. Danielle stopped on the sidewalk. The rear door of the sedan opened. Ethan Caldwell stepped out. No boardroom. No investors. No expensive restaurant protecting him with velvet doors and polished glass. Just a millionaire standing on a south side sidewalk while his breath turned white in the morning air. Ms. Brooks, he said. Danielle folded her arms against the cold. You found me. Your manager contacted you first. You gave permission for him to share the address. She remembered answering a half-awake call shortly before dawn. Right. Ethan glanced toward her Honda, then back at her. I owe you an explanation. If this is about my job, I already saw the message. The restaurant had asked her to return for her next scheduled shift. Full pay. No disciplinary action. An apology from management. Danielle had read it twice and felt almost nothing. It is about more than your job, Ethan said. He told her the closing had been suspended. He told her the documents had been altered. He told her page 47 had led his attorneys to other changes and financial connections that were now under independent review. Danielle listened without celebration. So I was right. You were. Ethan paused. And I was almost wrong when it mattered. Danielle looked at the sedan. Is that why this is here? Ethan followed her eyes. Partly. Thomas opened the front passenger door and removed a small envelope. Ethan took it and offered it to Danielle. She did not reach for it. What is that? Something I hoped would make your mornings easier. Danielle's expression tightened. Mr. Caldwell, if you came here to pay me for telling the truth, you can take the car back. Ethan froze. Thomas looked away, suddenly interested in the traffic. Danielle continued, calm but firm. I did not warn you because I wanted a reward. I did it because what I heard was wrong. I know. Do you? She pointed toward her building. People with money sometimes think gratitude has to come with a price tag. It does not. Ethan lowered the envelope. For the second time in less than 12 hours, Danielle Brooks had stopped him, with a sentence he had not expected. But this time, instead of defending himself, he listened. You are right, he said. Danielle studied him, surprised by how quickly the answer came. Ethan looked at the car, then back at her. The car can leave. He handed the envelope to Thomas. But there is another reason I came here, and it has nothing to do with paying you back. Danielle remained still. What reason? Ethan took a breath. Because last night you saw something everyone around me was paid to see, and you had the courage to say something when staying silent would have been easier. He paused. I do not want to reward that, Ms. Brooks. I want to know what you could do if someone finally gave it a real opportunity. A real opportunity? Danielle repeated. Ethan nodded. Caldwell Meridian has an executive operations program. It trains people to work across compliance, risk, logistics, and internal review. I want you to interview for it. Danielle looked at him carefully. Interview? Yes. Not a gift. Not a position with your name already printed on the door. An interview. If you earn the place, you earn it because you belong there. That mattered. Danielle had spent too many years watching people confuse help with ownership. She did not want Ethan Caldwell to rescue her. She wanted the same thing she had always wanted, a fair door and the chance to walk through it herself. And if I say no, she asked, then I thank you, apologize for showing up this early, and leave you alone. A small smile reached Danielle's face. That might be the first sensible thing you have said since you got here. Ethan laughed, not because she was flattering him, but because she was not. He reached into his coat and handed her a business card. Call Rebecca Shaw. She is overseeing the interviews. She does not report to me on hiring decisions for the program. Danielle took the card. You planned that part carefully. I learned something about conflicts of interest last night. This time Danielle laughed. The tension on the sidewalk finally softened. Then she looked again at the black sedan. And that? Ethan followed her gaze. I heard your car needs a transmission. Danielle glanced sharply at him. My manager talks too much. Apparently. Ethan paused. The sedan was meant as a thank you. You were right about that. And you were right to refuse it. He nodded toward Thomas. Take it back. Thomas gave a polite nod. Danielle watched him move toward the driver's side, then looked at her Honda. It still starts. Eventually, I was told. Usually by the third try. Ethan smiled. Then I hope it gives you a fourth. 3 weeks later, Danielle walked into Caldwell Meridian wearing a navy suit she had bought on sale and carrying the same quiet confidence she once carried between restaurant tables. She interviewed with 4 people. Ethan was not one of them. They asked about judgment, ethics, pressure, communication, and the night at the Marlowe room. Danielle never called herself brave. She simply explained what she had observed and why she believed silence would have been the wrong decision. 2 days later, Rebecca Shaw called. Danielle had earned a place in the program. 6 months after that, she was working with the corporate ethics and risk team, where noticing small inconsistencies was no longer treated as curiosity. It was her job. Ryan Mercer never returned to Caldwell Meridian. The independent investigation confirmed enough undisclosed financial conflicts for the company to permanently sever ties with him, while attorneys handled everything that followed. Ethan never spoke publicly about the betrayal. Some losses did not need an audience. One Friday evening, Danielle left the office and found Ethan near the lobby doors. How is the Honda? He asked. Retired with dignity. What replaced it? Danielle smiled and pointed through the glass. Parked outside was a reliable 3-year-old sedan she had bought herself after receiving her first promotion. Ethan looked at it and nodded. Good choice. Danielle started toward the door, then stopped. You know, that morning, I thought the expensive car was the biggest thing you could offer me. And now, she looked back toward the offices above them, toward the place where her judgment had a voice and her work had a future. Now I know it was the smallest. Ethan had nearly lost millions because he trusted the wrong man. Danielle had nearly lost her livelihood because she told the truth. Money could repair a car. Money could replace a contract. But it could not purchase integrity after the moment for integrity had passed. That required courage. And sometimes the person with the least power in the room was the only one brave enough to use it.